Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SALT Talks. My name is John Darcy. I'm the managing director of SALT, which is a global thought leadership forum and networking platform at the intersection of finance, technology, and public policy. SALT Talks are a digital interview series that we started in 2020 with leading investors, creators, and thinkers. And our goal on these SALT Talks is the same as our goal at our SALT conferences, which we're excited to resume here in September of 2021. And that is to provide a window into the mind of subject matter experts, as well as provide a platform for what we think are big ideas that are shaping the future. And we're very excited today to welcome another author to SALT Talks, and that is Edward-Isaac Dovere. Isaac is a staff writer for The Atlantic and its lead political correspondent. He's covered Democratic politics for 15 years, beginning in his native New York City and carrying him through the Obama White House and then across 29 states during the 2020 election cycle. His reporting has won the White House Correspondent Association's Merriman Smith Award for Excellence and the Society of Professional Journalists Daniel Pearl Award for Investigative Reporting, among many other awards. He attended Johns Hopkins University and the University of Chicago, and he's out with a fantastic new book, which is what we're going to talk about today. It's called Battle for the Soul: Inside Democrats' Campaign to Defeat Trump. Hosting today's talk is Anthony Scaramucci, who's the founder and managing partner of Skybridge Capital, which is a global alternative investment firm. Anthony is also the chairman of SALT. And since we're talking about politics, I always have to add in another piece of his bio. He had a cup of coffee as well for 11 days as Donald Trump's communications director. So looking forward to a fantastic conversation about the 2020 election between Anthony and Isaac.
He always brings it up. He thinks it's like a shot in the shorts that I got fired by Trump.
I mean, the good news.
It's over, okay? Okay, Darcy, it's over, okay? It's over. Okay?
You have to add the context.
Trump's really a character in this book, so I don't even have to mention the part where you were working for him.
All right, well, see, there he goes. I mean, even better yet, all these other guys that come on, there's like 5 paragraphs of my ridiculousness in their books, which is totally fine. But Isaac, first of all, congratulations. And before we get into the book, though, I think it's important for everybody to lay out your background, your life and career. Why did you get into political journalism? And then we'll dive into the book. But I want people to know who you are.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me to do this. It's really great. And I was saying right before we started that the SALT audience is full of some of the best people that I'd want to have reading this book anyway. And that you had me on to talk about it is really great. So I appreciate it. As for me, I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan, and went off to college thinking I'm kind of interested in politics and I'm kind of interested in writing. I didn't know what to do with any of that. Got involved with various things, did a couple of internships in college at the Hill newspaper back when it came out once a week, and that seemed like a big deal. And after I graduated college, I had the nerdiest form of peer pressure, which is that everybody that I knew was applying to PhD programs. And so I applied to PhD programs. I got into none of them, but I did get into a program for a master's degree at the University of Chicago. And I decided that I would go do that and see if that would lead me into a PhD program. The year that I was there was 2002-03. So now you can figure out exactly how old I am. I think that basically what happened was I had not realized how much September 11th and the aftermath of it had really hit me as a New Yorker. I didn't know anyone personally who was killed, but I did know the father of one of my best friends was in one of the towers and escaped. And 2002-03, that march to the Iraq War kind of shook me. And I thought, I can't be in academia. I got to get really into this. I moved back home to New York and started getting involved in community newspapers, worked my way up, was the founding editor of a publication that's now gone. It's called City Hall News, did a lot of political New York City, New York State focused stuff. And did that until 2011, moved to Washington, was recruited by Politico to move to Washington and be at first an editor there. And then I was the lead White House correspondent for basically Obama's second term. After Trump won, not because of any political reasons, but because I felt like I wanted to actually get to an understanding of what was going on that produced Trump's win. I came off White House coverage and was doing political coverage of all sorts of things around the country at Politico. In 2018, I moved to the Atlantic, right in the fall of 2018. The first day that I was on staff at the Atlantic, I flew out to Iowa for the first candidate who went to Iowa officially, and that was Cory Booker. Obviously, he never quite became more than that first trip to Iowa. And then I was, as John was saying, I was in 29 states over the course of the campaign, working, covering the race day to day for the Atlantic. But in the summer of 2018 already, I signed a contract for this book because I had a sense that this was going to be a crazy election that a lot was riding on, and that, in fact, it was going to be an election that was going to be a lot about the Democratic Party trying to sort out what the hell it was supposed to be and how it was going to survive. So I was just going to say, I never anticipated, obviously, the pandemic and all the things that came out of 2020 itself. But so the campaign was crazy, but not much more crazy than I anticipated it was going to be.
So I have a couple of questions. So you're writing about the Democratic Party, and you're writing about the factionalism in that party and how they picked an elder statesman effectively to try to do the best that he possibly could to unify that party. And the flip side is you have a very factionalized Republican Party as well. It seems like both of these parties are no longer reaching what I would call the bell curve of the center of the country. It seems like most people are centrists and moderates, and you've got hard left people and hard right people. Am I right about that? Am I missing that? You travel to 29 states. That's my observation. Tell me if I'm right or wrong.
No, I think you are right, and the election results kind of bear that out, right? Biden, if the primary campaign were won based on who ran like the best campaign by the campaign mechanics, Joe Biden wouldn't have won. Probably Elizabeth Warren would have won, but that's not how campaigns end up going on the presidential level. Someone once said to me that when you run for city council or for mayor or for governor or senate, whatever, any position other than president, it's like going in for a job interview. People look at your resume and say, okay, what have you done? Do you think you'd be good at it? But that running for president, voters make that decision based on how they feel in their guts. And Biden speaks to people's guts, and he always has. I think his real strength as a politician is that he has that emotional connection with people.
But he didn't start off well. He
not at all.
Behind the eight ball. He got hurt in Iowa. He got hurt in New Hampshire. Tell us your on-the-ground field experience about what was going on and how he was able to pull it off. And I should also point out to you that we interviewed the two authors of Lucky. Mm-hmm. They wrote their book Lucky because they said it was a close win for Joe Biden. People see the $7 or $8 million in the 7 or 8 million votes in the popular vote, and they're like, oh, no problem. But he really only won the election by 43,000 votes in the swing states. So tell us what was going on and how he was able to recover.
Okay. The first time that I was in Iowa with Biden was at the beginning of June 2019. And it was his second trip there. I had missed the first trip. And the first event that I went to is in a town called Ottumwa in Iowa. It's a small town. It's run on some rough times. And there's a theater there that they had said the event's going to be at. So we go into the theater, and they have chairs set up in a hallway on the side of the theater, like outside. And I thought, oh, this is where they're putting the reporters to wait until we go into the theater. And then they wouldn't let us sit in any of the seats because they said that's for the audience. And as there were, I can't remember what the count was. I think it was about 80 seats, right? For the former vice president of the United States, the man who was leading the polls. And that really carried through most of this campaign, really all of the campaign through Super Tuesday when he won the nomination. This was not a well put together campaign. This was a candidate who was often stumbling through speeches and trying to figure out what exactly he was saying and how he stood out in the field. He didn't feel comfortable attacking other Democrats. That was always a problem for him. So the debates were always bad. And it was what happened as a lot of the rest of the field coalesced in the way that it did. And some of the people dropped out because they ran out of money or they ran out of support. Usually it's when you run out of money that you drop out of a presidential campaign. And also, look, if he hadn't been at the end the option other than Bernie Sanders, I'm not sure that his campaign would have taken off in that final stretch like it did. I don't think he was lucky, though. I think that there were things that were going on, and the book gets into some of the strategic decisions in addition to tracking what was going on in some of the other campaigns. But it was sort of, I said to someone with Biden, if you look at the way that he won the presidency, it's almost as if it were written in the stars. And also the book tracks about 50 different ways where it almost came apart completely.
You know, there's a former president of the United States. He used to do a lot of tweeting. He doesn't have a Twitter account anymore, but he tweeted on the day that Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete Buttigieg came out of the race or thereabout, that they were giving the election to Joe Biden. And do you think that was actually the case? I was wondering, I looked at it and said, well, that's a reasonably astute political insight that the moderates don't want Bernie Sanders to run away with this. And so they're going to drop out so that their number two, who happened to be Joe Biden, becomes their number one. What did the former president miss?
Well, look, the former president is many things, but he is a pretty good observer of like basic politics, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that.
Oh, listen, he had great political instincts, particularly in 2016.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, what his instincts were when he opened up the onion, there was a lot of rotten folds inside the onion, which obviously we'll also be a little worried about.
And I think that he sometimes assumed that there was machinations going on when there weren't. It was not that Buttigieg dropped out just to screw Bernie Sanders, although he knew that would be part of what happened. He dropped out because he knew he was about to get embarrassed and not win any votes. But it was, as I point out in the book, Buttigieg endorsing Biden the night before Super Tuesday is the first time in the history of presidential politics that somebody with more delegates in a primary endorsed somebody with fewer delegates and dropped out. Sanders one of the key moments for Sanders is in the debate in Las Vegas in February. That's right before the Nevada primary or Nevada caucuses. I'm sorry. All the candidates are asked whether they think a majority of delegates would be what was necessary to win the nomination at the convention. And it was a question that Chuck Todd put to them. And all the candidates said they thought a majority except for Sanders. And he said he'd be fine with a plurality. And this lit up a backlash in the party against him that was sort of the gunpowder was already in the barrel. But that was the match for a lot of people. I talked to a guy named Larry Cohen, who's one of Sanders' closest friends and political advisor of his, was not working on this campaign, but runs that Our Revolution group that is inspired by the Sanders folks. And he said to me, it was the stupidest thing Bernie Sanders ever said. And it goes from there to, the basic discomfort that a lot of Democrats had with Sanders. Some of it was left over from the Clinton showdown in 2016. And some of it was thinking, are we really going to put up a socialist senator from Vermont against Donald Trump? These factors all ended up working in Biden's favor.
Anybody else on that field could have beaten Donald Trump?
I mean, it's the great what if, right? And it's funny, when the pandemic hit, I started to get from a lot of the campaigns. Remember, the sequencing of the pandemic is that Biden has basically wrapped up the nomination right before everything shuts down. And a number of the candidates' aides were pushing, this actually would have been a good moment for Elizabeth Warren because she has a lot of plans. It would have been a good moment for Mike Bloomberg because people liked management experience. It would have been a good moment for Bernie Sanders because everybody was thinking, should we have healthcare for everybody? It does not seem to me that there's a strong argument that one of the other candidates could have won. When you look at it, there's some focus groups that I quote at the end of the book that were done with the famed Obama-Trump voters, right? People who voted for Obama twice and then for Trump in 2016. and they were deciding Biden or Trump in 2020. And the read that they gave was on Trump, basically, I can't stand him, but he knows what to do with the economy. It's not really fair to him what happened to the economy. That, it's like a meteor hit here with the pandemic, and probably when the pandemic's done, he would be better to get us out of it. But I don't think he can get us out of it. The read on Biden was, he's a good man. I don't know that he knows what he's doing with the economy. I'm a little spooked with what's going on and the defund the police and that. It seems very strange what's happening in the Democratic Party. But we need to get out of the pandemic, and I think he can get us through it. And that kind of that comfort that people had with Biden and the comfort in his experience and in his personality, there isn't another candidate who really had that.
So I want you to be the objective consultant. I'm hiring you, Isaac. Okay, and
it's a bad idea to hire a reporter.
You have two jobs. I mean, you're not a reporter in this case. You're this objective, omniscient, well-researched Politico. And then you're coming in, and I'm asking you to please evaluate for me the strengths and weaknesses of the Democratic Party going into 2022 and 2024. And if you were the party chair or you were the guru for the party, what would you recommend to them? And then subsequently, I'm going to ask you that same question related to the Democrats. You're the
Democrats first and then Republicans?
Whatever you want. You're the guru. You're the guru.
All right. Well, the book's about the Democrats, so I'll start with the Democrats.
Yeah.
The Saturday before the election, I was in Miami. Kamala Harris was doing a bunch of stops, trying to get Florida where they wanted to be. And she kept on saying this line that was towards the beginning of her speech that was something like, and I just want you to know, Joe Biden and I are both proud Americans. And at one point after she'd said it at 3 or 4 events, someone who was working on the campaign said to me, did you notice that line? And I said, yeah. And the person said, that's pushing back on the socialist stuff that they're saying down here in Florida. Now, my response to that was, it was a little too subtle for me to hear. And I'm the reporter who was paid to be paying very close attention to this. And second of all, if that's all that they had as the pushback, that really didn't seem like enough. They underestimated in Florida how powerful that argument would be, especially with people from Central and Latin America who either came themselves or had relatives there and are very suspicious of anything that says socialism, right? And that's maybe more powerful when there's a closer connection to a socialist country, but it is a real issue for voters all around the country to think that Democrats are turning towards socialism. And the truth is, at this point, most of the people who are the most prominent, most often on TV characters in the Democratic Party are people who say that they tend towards socialism, other than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the rest of the administration itself. But Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, other activist types, that makes a lot of people who are not socialists or socialist inclined themselves uncomfortable, whether or not that's fair. And that's something that the party really needs to deal with.
But let me interrupt for a second. Is that a mainstream thought, socialism in America? Is that a thought for 10, 20, 30% of the people? Are they out of the mainstream with that thinking?
I mean, look, elections are lost and won usually by at most 20% in the middle, going back and forth. It's probably less than that, really. It's 45% of people are one way, are going to go with the Democrat no matter what, and 45 with the Republican no matter what. And it's that 10% that you're trying to find. Now, that 10% can also be accounted for by new voters turning out. And that's one of the arguments that's been going on in the Democratic Party. But one of the things that towards the end of the book that I get into is there was a protest a couple of weeks after the election in favor of the Green New Deal that was held right outside of the DNC headquarters in Washington. And it was led by all the members of the squad. And Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, comes, and she was giving a speech that said, I had the highest turnout in America in my district. And people say to me, Ilhan, how do you do it? Ilhan, what? And it's because I gave them something to believe in. And she's standing there and she says it. And it's true. She did have the highest turnout. That's a district, by the way, that George Floyd was killed in. It's a district in a swing state of Minnesota. It's a district that was represented by Keith Ellison, the Attorney General now, before he was Attorney General. There's a lot going on in that district. Sorry.
See, that's our YouTubeable moment right there.
There you go.
You got stuff flying around at you. I usually get my young kids coming in karate chopping me on live television, so it's fine.
But the point that I was making is that I'm not sure she realized, and certainly wasn't what she said that day, is that her district was the biggest drop off between votes for president and a House member in the entire country. So it's true that people turned out and they felt like they had something they believed in. They were turning out for Joe Biden. Right. They were not turning out for her.
So, and quickly, because the book is about the Democrats, what would you say for the Republicans?
I don't see how there is a winning strategy to lash yourself to not just somebody from the past, as Donald Trump is at this point, but someone who has proven that he will never be satisfied, that no matter what, it's never enough. And he enjoys making people squirm. You can see that he's doing that with Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. When you're talking about a battle for the soul, you got to say, do any of these people have any souls? I'm trying to find Kevin's soul. I liked Kevin. I mean, I gave Kevin money. I was obviously a lifelong Republican, but I mean, these guys they've decided that they're just going to completely distort the facts and gaslight the country. So, I mean, we can go in that direction, but I don't think it's very healthy.
I mean, that's its own question, right? Like, is it the good thing to do? Is it the politically smart thing to do? Is also, I think, very much in the air. Obviously, the reasons of where the trends are historically, the midterm for the incumbent president is rarely good. And there are a lot of factors about gerrymandering in certain states that are going to give Republicans a leg up going into next year in the House races.
So the Republicans are going to win the House?
I don't know that that's a done deal. It almost like it shouldn't be a question. And I don't think it would be if not for these bigger factors going on.
Right. Typically the party not in power wins the House, but in this case, because they're so screwed up, they may blow it.
Yeah, it's sort of like if the Republicans don't win the House next year, it will, I think, be more because they lose it than that the Democrats hold on to it.
Joe Biden running for re-election?
It's hard to tell. I mean, he is working really hard every day at that job, and he'll be 82. There are, actuarial things that are there for him. But he really wanted to be president. And the book ends with an interview that I did with him at the beginning of February. And there's a level of confidence in him of like, yeah, I'm here. I'm finally in charge. I'm going to do it this way. That was striking to me. And I've talked with other people who've been around him since he's been sworn in, and they said the same thing. I don't know if that means that by the time that he gets to the end of the first term, probably won't be all the way to the end. He'd have to make a decision in another, let's say, 18 months to let the party prepare if it's not going to be him. He may look at it and say, like, I want to give it another shot. I may be the only one who can win. That's how.
Yeah, I think he's going to run again. It's very hard to run away from this sort of power. But I've got to turn it over to the erstwhile blonde millennial, because the reason why you're going to be able to sell books is that all of his fan base tunes in to see him. You and I are just a sideshow of distraction. But I have one last question for you. Okay. Is Trump running again?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah.
And
orange is the new black, as you know. He may be in an orange jumpsuit before this is over. We'll have to see.
Well, I mean, that part, I guess we'll
Let me tell you something. I don't think you bring a criminal case against a former president and his former organization or his current organization unless you're pretty confident. I don't think you take those steps, but we'll have to see. I got to turn it over to Darcy because I really want you to sell books. And it's The Battle for the Soul. And the underlying pretext is what happened inside the Democrats' campaign to defeat Trump. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited for you because I think you're right at the edge of where things are right now. And I want people to go out and buy your book. But I got to turn it over to John Darcy, which will guarantee Isaac, that people buy your book.
Do you need to stop talking then so we get to that part?
Yes, I know.
Absolutely.
But I got to put myself on mute for that to happen. My lips are going to be moving while John's talking to you. Hold on a sec.
Isaac, I just want to clarify the point on Ilhan Omar, because I think it's just a fascinating discussion point. So she talked about how she had high turnout, and you talked about the discrepancy between Joe Biden's share of the vote in her district and her share of the vote. Are you saying that it was the biggest drop off between the presidential candidate and the House representative?
Yeah, the biggest. So I don't remember the percentages offhand, but the most Biden got, whatever it was, let's say 85% in the district. This is roughly where it was,
right?
High 80s. And she got something like 66% or 62%. And in most districts, it closely matches, that the same number of people, vote Democrat all the way down the line. That means that there are people who went in to vote for Joe Biden, like a lot of them, who voted for him, and by the time they got to her, either didn't vote for her or voted for someone else.
Right. And you think that's evidence that the more progressive and give you something to believe in notion within the Democratic Party is misplaced. So going back to the point about, whether somebody like Bernie with a more energetic populist message you think would have lost, and that's the wrong direction for the party.
I mean, look, I'm not sure he would have lost. I think it would have been a much harder thing. Right. I think what that shows is that you see how one of the things, by the way, that it shows is Biden's own strong connection to Black voters, especially older Black voters, that carried him through South Carolina and just floated him, right, even when everything else was going wrong for his campaign. But I think the Democratic Party right now is sort of at a crossroads, right, of figuring out, do they see themselves as trying to be the party that folks like Ilhan Omar and Ocasio-Cortez would like it to be, and what Bernie Sanders would like it to be? Do they, for those folks, do they look at the Biden win and say, people they were so scared of Trump, or they liked him, whatever, it was a fluke, essentially?
Right.
Or do you look at the election results and say, you know what, like there was something to Biden that people connected with, and it may not quite make sense by the usual political science calculations, but you see, I track a lot of moments in this book of these human connections that he was making with people, and the way that people feel about him, and the way that people feel about his approach to politics. I think there's a great example if you look at what happened a couple of weeks ago when the All-Star game, the baseball All-Star game, was deciding whether to move out of Atlanta when Georgia passed those new voting laws. And Biden was asked about it, and he said something like, I think that's something that people should consider. He didn't say okay, right. If George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, just go in recent history here, had said anything like that, it would have exploded. People would have gone to their separate barricades. We have to have the game there. We can't have the game there. Instead, what happened when Biden said that is, certainly there was a lot of pushback to moving the game, and there are a lot of people who said that absolutely had to be moved. But with a certain layer of people, that it was, maybe we should consider it. And that's something that is a power that Biden alone has, I think, right, because of the connection people have to him. And that's powering him through very well now. I don't think most people see him as like acting in this super partisan way. And if you look at the polls, they don't. But the American Rescue Plan passed with only Democratic votes. Right. If the infrastructure plan passes, it'll probably pass with mostly Democratic votes, if not entirely. Right. And the same thing for any of the other things they're looking at.
Right. You talked about how Black voters essentially rescued Biden during the primary and basically rescued the country from Trump, more or less, in the general election. But the Hispanic vote was a fascinating phenomenon. So people just sort of took for granted or assumed that Biden and the Democratic Party had a stranglehold on Hispanic votes because of some of the rhetoric coming from Trump and his administration and their actions around immigration. But actually, we saw a big move from the Hispanic demographic towards Trump, especially in Miami-Dade County, other counties in Florida, in El Paso, Texas, for example. Do you think that's going to be part of a more long-term shift within both parties, where you're going to see more Hispanic voters gravitate towards Republicans and, using the messaging on socialism and the idea that, maybe unfettered immigration isn't a positive thing? Or do you think that was just a blip on the radar screen?
I think the socialism argument that Republicans make against Democrats is very powerful with a lot of voters, and I think it seems to be particularly powerful with people who, as I was saying earlier, have a connection, not just are Latino or Hispanic, but if they themselves or they have parents or relatives who come from a country that has had bad experiences with socialism, that resonates, and you saw that happen in Florida. It's really hard to argue that if the Democrats had been able to quash the socialism thing, that they wouldn't have done better in Florida and maybe even won it. Donald Trump is very smart, as I said, about certain things in politics. He knows how to get to the base instincts of people. There was a reason why they kept saying socialism and why he kept talking about socialism. It worked. And I do think that long term is a problem for Democrats. I'm not sure that you will see any clear movement of Hispanics overall, but that's bad news for the Democrats, who assumed that more Hispanic, more Latino population, more voters who were Latino means more votes for them. And particularly in a place like Texas, the Democrats have been thinking for, I don't know, how many election cycles have we done? There's like, this is the one that Texas is going to be Democratic. Well, like it's not happening. Yep. And now, where is the interest in Texas for 2022? It's in Matthew McConaughey running, right? Who we can check.
All right.
Right. And I don't think that there's any Latino blood in Matthew McConaughey. I believe his wife is Latina, but
there you go.
I'm not a Matthew McConaughey expert.
Yeah, the celebrity thing, they're trying to repurpose that strategy, but. In terms of how President Biden has governed, do you think that he's governed in the same vein that he campaigned and been a moderate and been restrained? Or do you think that he's moved to the left? And what do you think the country's response to the way he's governed has been so far?
This is one of the things that I track in the book a lot. I don't think the presidency that he is having is anywhere like the presidency or anything like the presidency that he thought he was going to have. And that is because of the pandemic and what was exposed by the pandemic and the opportunities that were created by the pandemic. He sees himself now in a special and perhaps unique moment in history to change the way that things go in this country. He has, when I was talking to him, he pointed out the Franklin Roosevelt portrait that he has hanging over the fireplace in the Oval Office. I can pretty much guarantee you that would not have been the main portrait that he would have hung in the Oval Office before. I don't know who it would have been, but seeing himself as this new Roosevelt is because of what happened here, right? And now I think that what he is doing is very reasonably making the assumption and the argument that there's a difference between the kind of pushback that he gets from Republicans in Congress versus Republicans out in the country. And you see that the American Rescue Plan had much higher poll numbers than you would have guessed based on that it didn't get a single Republican vote in the House or Senate. And among Republicans, right, higher poll numbers. That's the pitch that he's making to the country. And it seems to be working. People just look at him and seem to think like, he can't be that far out there. Even though when you look at the substance of what he's talking about here, this is major legislation, major structural change to this country, and things that progressives a couple of years ago would never have thought could be possible, and definitely didn't think would be possible in a Joe Biden presidency.
Right. It seems like the punches that the Republicans are throwing at Biden right now in terms of trying to criticize his administration are not landing. They're trying to liken this to Jimmy Carter 2.0, where you have fuel prices went up, but that was because of just a black swan event, the hack that happened on the pipeline. They're talking about lumber prices and the inflation that's being caused by all this fiscal irresponsibility. But if you were the Democrats right now and you're sitting in their strategic seat, what candidate on the Republican side would you be most worried about based on where your party is?
So I'm not sure what the answer to that is. And again, I think that history will have a pretty clear judgment on Trump's presidency. But whatever you think of him, good or bad, whatever, especially for Democrats who found him abhorrent, they sort of tend to overlook how skilled he was politically and how good he was at connecting with people. And I'm not sure that you see anyone of the prospective Republican candidates who has anywhere near that skill set. Whether it's Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, the names that we've talked about so far, it's not, they have other skills. They're just not as good at the political part of it as Trump was. I think we all underestimated how good Trump would be at connecting with people. But that's, I think in retrospect, because we didn't appreciate how much he had sort of trained by all the ways that he was out there and all the ways that he had embedded himself into people's psyches. I mean, I have spent a lot of time in the pandemic cooking, as many of us have, and I've watched too many old sitcoms on like Amazon Prime and Hulu and whatever else. And it is astounding to me how much Trump shows up as just throwaway jokes. I will tell you, I found an episode of Perfect Strangers, which I used to watch when I was a kid. I was watching it on Hulu, and there's like, they think that they won the lottery, and Cousin Larry says like, "Ha, take that, Donald Trump." That's great. There's no one else who has that kind of connection to us all culturally. The only other person I think does is Oprah. Oprah's politics are not going to put her in a good place in a Republican primary, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, he's a brilliant marketer, and as his business career has shown, that as a real estate developer or as a governing politician, he doesn't necessarily excel, but in terms of marketing the message and building his brand, he does a fantastic job. On the Democratic side, let's say Joe Biden serves one term, he decides not to run, or even if he does run in 7 years from now. Yeah. What does the bench look like in the Democratic Party? Who do you think are going to be ascendant stars that are going to take this baton from Biden and lead the party forward?
Well, look, the most obvious one, of course, is Kamala Harris. Just incumbent vice president, it's always going to be where things are. Harris does seem to represent what the face of the party, more ethnically, racially diverse, a woman, right? Like that's where the base of the party is going. But
certain people within the party don't like her. You know, they think that she comes off as unlikable. She comes from California, that's, experienced some issues. You see some, we work in the financial industry. You see people from Silicon Valley moving to places like Miami because of their dissatisfaction with things that are going on in California. Right. Is she likable? Is she the one just because by default she's the incumbent?
Isn't likable, then we learn that that's a word that when it was used about Hillary Clinton has a little bit to do with sexism.
Misogyny.
Right.
I'll get some hate mail.
I will quote something that Jennifer Palmieri, who was the communications director for Hillary Clinton, has said. And it's that it's very hard for us to think of a woman in power and a woman being president because a woman has never been president. So we don't have that frame of reference. Right. And I think that Harris is trying out how that looks for and getting people used to that. She's the one who's the most likely to be in that position because she's vice president. There are other ones out there too. Of course, a lot of attention has gone to Pete Buttigieg, even though he's transportation secretary. And I think you'll see other senators and governors come up. One of the things that happened very much in the Obama years is that there was a just ravaging of the bench. And not a lot of Democrats that are left in the up and coming generation from the pre-2012, 2014 years. So you've just had 5-6 years of new people coming up, and of course Harris is one of them, right? She's the vice president now, but she was elected to the Senate for the first time in 2016 on the night that Trump won. That's in the book too. Her trying to figure out what it is to be elected to the Senate and being happy about it, but also that Trump wins. She's completely spooked by it. And there's a scene at early in the book of her coming to her party and wanting to speak to all the people there and celebrate. And her staff says we got to get you out of the building. You can't answer any questions.
Did Obama want Biden to be president? We've covered this with a couple other authors that we've had on that have chronicled the lead up to and the 2020 election, about some frostiness that might exist between the two of them based on the handling of 2016 and then 2020. Did Obama want Biden to be president, or how do you think he's evaluating the party right now?
So want is a complicated question, right? He was not convinced that Biden could be president, or could win the presidency, not could be president. There's a moment early in the book when he's flying back from a Christmas party at the end of 2017 that was in Chicago for the Obama Foundation. And they're talking on the plane, and he says, okay, in your head and in your heart, who do you think in your head could win? Who do you think in your heart could win? And who do you want in your head to run and in your heart to run? And who do you think could win? And he himself picks Bill McRaven, the Navy SEAL commander for the Bin Laden raid, for his head. For his heart. Love
Admiral McRaven. He spoke in SALT in 20 minutes.
He, in his heart, says, of course, Biden. I love Biden. Who could win? I'm not sure. I don't know. He was talking a lot about how physically taxing the job of president is, and that it's hard for older people. When people would hear him say that, they were like, okay, we get it. We know who you're talking about. He would talk about that he didn't know if Biden would be able to connect with people. There's a moment from when Biden is still vice president and he's flying in Air Force Two, and he says to somebody, he's talking about Obama, and he says, I've never seen somebody who's better at talking to 10,000 people than to one. Right? That's what he says about Obama. And Obama's feeling about Biden was like the reverse of that, right? It was like, yeah, Biden's great, like chumming around, but like he can't like put lots of people in a rally and rev them up.
Right.
And, there are realistic factors of would Biden's campaign have looked worse in contrast to Trump's if he had been spending all of last year doing rallies instead of not because of the coronavirus.
Right.
So your question was, did Obama want Biden to run? I think it comes down to skepticism.
Right.
He loves him, but he's not convinced. And you see that all the way through the end of the campaign, his feeling of like, okay, like, I guess this is working. It better work, but like,
right. Yeah, he certainly waited till sort of the last hour to make that formal endorsement, which Biden said that he asked Obama not to endorse him. And I think people definitely believe that version of events. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But Edward-Isaac Dovere, it's been fantastic to have you on SALT Talks. The book is called Battle for the Soul: Inside Democrats' Campaigns to Defeat Trump. Maybe there'll be another one of those campaigns in 4 years. You say no, but you never know.
I said I'm not.
You're not convinced. All right. Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but it would be interesting if it does happen. But I think there's at least one person on this SALT Talk that hopes it doesn't. But and I'll leave people guessing about who that is. But thank you so much for joining. Anthony, you have a final word before we let Isaac leave?
First of all, how do you know that I don't want that? Because that would be a lot of fun for me. Okay. Isaac
I didn't say it was you.
Isaac knows I like fighting.
My
wife says to me, now that Trump's gone, who the hell are you going to fight with?
Yeah.
And make sure it's not me. Okay. So that's why I pick on Darcy on every SALT Talk.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to fight with somebody.
Or something.
Exactly. So how do you know that I don't want Trump to run again? I mean, that could be one of the more exciting
better for
things
me, actually.
I'm just asking you. Isaac, God bless and congratulations on the book. And hopefully we can get you to one of our live events.
I'd love to.
The world clears up a little bit. And,
I'm fully vaccinated, so
we're rooting for you. Yeah, we are too, and we're rooting for you. And I look forward to reading the book. I apologize that I didn't get it. I didn't get access to it before the talk, but I will definitely read it, and I'll let you know what I think. I wish you the best of luck with it.
I appreciate that. I know you're usually really.
I also want to apologize for the way we're dressed, okay? Because even though we're in the office, for whatever reason, we weren't wearing the fancy pants clothing that you are. So I feel a little bit off.
It's the reverse for me because I'm sitting in my home, but I put a tie on for you. I've had a tie on, I don't know, maybe 6 times since the pandemic hit. But for you, Anthony,
but are you wearing champion shorts from the waist down?
I'll tell you. I'll admit I'm not wearing shoes, but I am wearing pants.
All right, there you go. That's congruent to other COVID fashion. So God bless. Congratulations on the book. We wish you well. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to today's Salt Talk with Edward-Isaac Dovere, talking about his book, Battle for the Soul. Just a reminder, if you missed any part of this talk or any of our previous Salt Talks, you can access them on our website at salt.org/talks or on our YouTube channel, which is called SaltTube. And we're continuing to build out our website. We have full transcripts available there, links to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as some key quotes that we pull from every episode. So definitely salt.org. And we also have SALT New York, our conference coming up in September. Registration for that will open in June. So we hope as many of you as is possible and safe can join us there. But on behalf of the entire SALT team, this is John Darcy signing off from SALT Talks for today. We hope to see you back here again soon.